And we want to welcome the incoming White House Communications Director, Anthony Scaramucci, to the broadcast. Mr. Scaramucci, welcome to Face the Nation. I want to start with the president's tweet yesterday about pardons. He said he has complete pardon power. Why is he tweeting about pardons?
Well, I think that unfortunately he may have had a conversation in the Oval Office or somewhere about it, and then people rush out to leak that information to people. It's just very unprofessional and very harmful. And I think that the gist of that leak, basically, or that tweet, I should say, is that he's not going to pardon anybody. He doesn't need to pardon anybody, and it's just really about the leaking that is actually injurious to the government, felonious to the government. But he's done absolutely nothing wrong, and there's no need for him to pardon anybody. But he just doesn't like the fact that he has a 2-minute conversation in the Oval Office or in his study, and then people are running out and leaking that. And so we're going to work on culturally changing that, because it's extremely unprofessional. He's the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States. The people that are standing around him that are doing that sort of nonsense are actually un-American. They're doing an injustice to the institution of the American presidency, and we're going to work very hard to change the culture of that.
What happens to leakers on your watch?
They're going to get fired. I'm just going to make it very, very clear. Okay, tomorrow I'm going to have a staff meeting. It's going to be a very binary thing. I'm not going to make any prejudgments about anybody on that staff. If they want to stay on the staff, they're going to stop leaking. If the leaks continue, we are strong as our weakest link. And I'll say it a little differently in a pun. We're as strong as our weakest leak. So if you guys want to keep leaking, why don't you guys all get together and make a decision as a team that you're going to stop leaking. But if you're going to keep leaking, I'm going to fire everybody. It's just very binary.
You talk about the president's success in communicating, getting his message across. Is it helpful when he talks about or tweets about the special counsel's investigation?
You know, the truth of the matter is that is the president. That's the crystal essence of the president. And so some of you guys in the media think it's not helpful, but if he thinks it's helpful to him, let him do it. At the end of the day, I think when those investigations are over, it'll be another chapter in Washington's Scandals Incorporated, that we had to have a scandal going on and gin up all this sort of nonsense so that we could distract the president from his agenda and his people and run around chasing something that's all about nothing. And so I know we do that a lot in Washington. I certainly don't want to do that. What I want to do is I want to focus on the president's agenda, how he's going to help middle-class people, lower middle-class people, how we're going to take it to ISIS like we're taking it to them right now.
Well, let me
those are the things that I really think are super important for us to focus on. And so let Robert Mueller and that team focus on that. I'm going to focus as little on that as possible.
Isn't there a conflict between that, though? The president's raising issues about the motivations of Mueller's team. Is that helpful?
Like I said, it doesn't matter to me whether it's helpful or not.
Well, doesn't it get in way of the message that you were just talking about?
Well, it may and it may not, right? You guys like talking about that stuff, and I understand that, but I'm not going to. What I'm going to do is we're going to be very proactive, very offensive, and very aggressive on the president's agenda. And so you guys want to talk about that, that's fine. I'm going to talk about the stuff that I think are important to the American people.
So it sounds like there's a new bright line. You won't be talking about the special counsel. Kellyanne Conway was on TV this week raising questions about donations some on the council staff had made. Will that stop? There will be talk about the agenda and no talk about the investigation?
You know what I'm going to do, John? I'm going to sit down with Don McGahn, and I'm going to sit down with the outside counsel. I'm very close to Jay Sekulow. We know each other very well. Trust Jay. I know John Dowd as well. I'm going to sit down with these guys. I did go to Harvard Law School, and I will understand the lines of communication, what we can say from the White House, what we can't say from the White House, and then we'll operate a strategy that I think will knock the socks off of people. What I don't like about what's going on right now is that when we get hit, we're on the heels of our feet, and we want the president to be on the heels of his feet. The president doesn't operate like that. The president operates off the balls of his feet. He's an aggressive guy. It's the reason why he won the presidency. And so we're going to come up with a strategy that's going to knock people's socks off. It's going to be pro-Trump agenda. And when the investigation dies down, I hope you'll invite me back on the show so I can say, see, that was another one of those ridiculous investigations.
You're from the business world. You know how these things work. The president was very critical of his attorney general in public in the New York Times. How does that help?
Okay, so from the business world, what I would say about that, and from my experience with the president's a pretty wear his heart on the sleeve sort of a guy. if people are very, very thin-skinned, I think it's going to be super tough to work for this president. The president has said things to me in a tough and honest, direct way. And I think he's a very good athletic coach, if you will. And so what I would recommend to all of my colleagues in Washington, and know the president very well, if he's saying stuff about you that you don't like, call him up, go see him, go get in the Oval Office or the study.
Why do it in public? Why not in private? It undermines the man as he's trying to serve the country.
Because that's the president's personality, and it's not really that big of a deal. If you have a thin skin, what I'm learning about Washington, crocodile skin is not even the right metaphor. How about like titanium oxide? Okay,
but the president is known for responding to things that are said about him, so surely he responds to everything that's said about him. Does he have thin skin?
Does the president? Actually, the president doesn't have thin skin, but what the president is a fighter. The president doesn't like people saying stuff about him, and he wants them to stop it, and so he hits back. You know, what I enjoy about that, if you're saying something about him that he doesn't like, and then he says something about you, all of a sudden you get upset. But then you don't want him to get upset when you're saying stuff about him. It's asymmetrical nonsense. Why don't we focus on the agenda instead of all of this nonsense?
You said in a tweet, my political views don't matter. That, I assume, also carries over to the donations you've made. You've supported Democrats in the past. All that doesn't matter for you doing your job.
Listen, I'm an American businessman, and I'm a very practical guy. I've supported a lot of different people. I went to law school with President Obama. You know, if you've noticed over the last 2 years that I've been more or less in the public domain, I don't like attacking people personally. I like debating policy. Mm-hmm. I never once attacked personally Secretary Clinton. I have found that when I have attacked people personally, that's been a stupid mistake on my part. And so whoever I've attacked personally, I apologize for. But here's what I was trying to do yesterday with those tweets. I think it is nonsensical and more Washington nonsense that we have to take this political purity ideological test. So if I said I was for something and now I'm against something, that makes me a hypocrite. I don't believe in that. I think it's stupid. And I want to subordinate my political views to the views of the president and his agenda.
So if you're able to subordinate the people you've supported in the past, the things you've said, and the money you've given, why then does the president raise past donations as disqualifying of the people who are working for Robert Mueller? Shouldn't the principle shouldn't the principle work in both cases?
Okay, well, hold on. I'm not the president, John. That's the president's
No, I'm just talking about the principle, though. You've said that your past donations don't matter. Shouldn't it then?
I understand that. But you asked me the question, so let me just answer the question. I don't think it really makes a difference for me, but I am the communications director. The president's saying something a little bit different. Okay, the president's suggesting that there might be people that are politically motivated to hit him and his family members, even though that there's nothing there. Now, I have been the victim of that. It's a nasty thing. It's really not something that you like going through. Someone's accusing you of something that you didn't do, and then you got to go out and hire yourself a lawyer, and you have to prove. For some reason, in these scandals, we've flipped the Constitution around. You're guilty until you go out there and prove yourself innocent. Well, you're not innocent until proven guilty. And so the president doesn't like that. He thinks it's dishonest, and it's subverting the agenda that he's trying to project.
The investigators are just doing the work. I don't think they've accused him of anything yet, at least by the president's admission. He says he's not being accused of anything and he's not under investigation, but they're doing their job and subordinating whatever they may have done with political donations, which seems like the same accommodation you're asking for.
Okay, so but again, I'm not the president. So if the president wants to say that about them, let him say it. It's fine.
So do you think that they're compromised by their past donations?
Am I compromised by my past donations?
Do you think the investigators are?
Do I think the investigators are? I don't know. I don't know these guys personally. If you give me a half hour with each of these guys, I'm pretty good at reading people. I could figure out in probably 30 minutes if they're compromised or not. But I don't know the guys personally. They may or may not be, sir. I have no idea.
Let me ask you finally on the question of mixed messages. This week, the president has said 3 different things about health care. On the 17th, he said Republicans should repeal the failing Obamacare bill and then start with a clean state. On the 18th, he said, let Obamacare fail. On the 19th, he said, the country needs more than repeal. It needs repeal and replace. That's 3 different messages over 3 days. Isn't the president's message muddled?
No, not at all. You see, look, this is the thing I hope we can do this for the president. I hope we can explain what he's doing and explain what he's thinking. And I hope that what you'll start to realize, which is very refreshing to the American people, he's signaling over the top of the mainstream media. So let's go over each of those tweets. He basically wants to repeal and replace Obamacare. He knows that's the best thing for the American people. It turns out that he may not be able to get that done with a recalcitrant Congress. And so then he fires out a tweet, let's just repeal it. Then it turns out, because he's working super hard, he's probably the most effective legislative liaison person in the world, he may get the chance to repeal and replace it. So then he's sending out that tweet. His point is he's a business person. He's got a Rubik's Cube on his desk, basically, that he has to spin through because there's so many confusing people in Washington. And he's trying to figure out if he can get his objectives done, which are to repeal and replace Obamacare.
But the members of Congress working on this bill,
there's a lot of different interests there, sir.
But the senators working on the bill right now have no idea what his position is. He's beating them up on the one hand, then he's saying they should do this and that. I guess that's the point, is that the message is mixed to them.
There's not one person in Washington that doesn't know the president's position. And if there is, and hopefully they watch your show because you got a great show, he would like to repeal and replace Obamacare. That's what he would like to do. If you're going to stop him from doing that, the next best thing would be to repeal Obamacare. If you're not going to repeal and replace Obamacare, then the third best thing is let it implode. Because if you let it implode, there'll be a big enough crisis. And unfortunately, in this town called Washington, these politicians respond better to crises than they do to just practical problem solving, which we could do right now before the implosion. So I think on a gradient, that's what the president's saying, John.
Will the president get what he wants next week? Will it pass?
I don't know if he's going to get what he wants next week, but he's going to get what he wants eventually, because this guy always gets what he wants, okay? What I know about President Trump is that the world, he's got very, very good karma. He's very, very good to the people that are super close to him. Look at how great his kids turned out. You can't fake good kids. And the world turns back to President Trump. And so my prediction is he's going to get exactly what he wants. He's going to get health care reform. He's going to get tax reform. And he's going to start to put the deregulatory pillars in place so that our businesses and our economies can grow again. Community banks can start lending again. And the people that I grew up with, the people in my neighborhood that have been struggling with low income and low wages, are going to see a burst in economic activity. And he's going to get reelected. And we're going to work on that feverishly over the next 2.5, 3 years.
Final question. The Senate and the House have passed sanctions legislation on Russia, or are going to. Will the president sign that? And if not, what more does he need to know about, what more does the president need to know about Russians' interference with the election?
That's a really good question. So I haven't seen any of that information, so I don't know the answer to that. I also don't know the answer to whether or not he's going to sign it. But we'll know shortly, and when we do, whether he signs it or he doesn't sign it, if you invite me back on, I'll try to explain to you the rationale and the reasoning that went into that decision.
All right, Anthony Scaramucci, thanks so much for being with us. We'll be back in a minute with a lot more Face the Nation.